up in there. Okay. All right. Welcome to week 5. I think it's 5 of the Fellows program. We're now getting into more of the practical stuff. We did branding last week. We're getting into website building this week and really going on the theme of communication, because ultimately it's about how do you communicate your message out there, multiple platforms. Website is one, which we'll talk about today, but I want you to be thinking broadly about your communication strategy. Okay, this goes into the, I think, question number 8 in your workbook about that strategy. So really think deeply about it. Don't just like a one sentence, yeah, we'll do on websites. No, think through it. Like, what is going to be that messaging strategy that you're going to be using to get your word out there? And then what exactly are you trying to communicate to people? So before we get into that, a couple of reminders. So the pitch deck, I shared kind of the outline of what you guys should be putting on your pitch decks. This is a guide. It's really, you have 5 minutes, so you can't really go too far off script, okay? You can do it. Most pitches are actually 2 minutes. So we're giving you extra time. So please definitely practice it. Try to follow the logic model workbook right now, and hopefully you've been paying attention to like kind of the homeworks, because they basically force you to build a deck as you go. And this is something you can use to share with people, to share with potential funders that can that can basically then see, do I want to talk to you more or not? Okay. Traction, a word about traction. Some of you are worried about that. This is really about you sharing any progress you've made so far. Okay. You've sent a survey out, check. You have, what did they say? Check. Did you launch? Check. You applied to something, check. You recruited someone, check. Okay. You're showing progress, that this thing that you're building is moving forward. Okay. Think of it from the funder's perspective. For them seeing you that you've done this already means that you're serious and things are moving forward. Okay, so that's where traction really is. And if you don't have any of that, plans for traction are just as effective. We plan to look at X, Y, and Z. Okay, and logic model here, the output section is where you should just go look at that, because it will give you a lot of insight into that. Okay. All right, I'll plug in the rest later, but with this, I want to introduce Brittany. Brittany is one of our junior residents, and she's an instructor as well, teaches website building to our folks here, and also she has her own business as well. So you guys should definitely ask her questions about how she does that. She describes herself as a STEMpreneur. Okay, that's a thing. It's out there. And so she's been out there in the real world working with clients. And so I'm hoping today we'll talk about website building, of course, and she can share some new insights into that, but also just broadly about her and her path, right, into doing what she's doing. Brittany, welcome, and thanks so much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. So I'll just start sharing my screen. Okay. Do you guys see the PowerPoint? Okay, cool. All right, hello, everyone. Today my presentation is called Your Website Starter Kit. We will be talking about why you need a website and how to make your website in 4 simple steps for any website builder, and as well as a little bit of a technical setup overview. So before we begin, just make sure to have like a notepad or a doc. If you have any questions, just write them down and we'll get to it at the end. So first, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Brittany. I started my web design business unofficially in April 2019. I actually volunteered with Prasha on her podcast, Her STEM Story. That's how my whole career online started. She was the one who encouraged me to start my side hustle doing this after I worked on their website. And so that was really a whole story of leveraging my online presence for future goals. So I connected with her through Twitter, and that's how that started, which it has been a great, interesting journey since. And I officially started my business in September, so it took about 6 months or so for me to really get going. And Since then, I've helped over 20 plus clients from around the world in different industries, whether it's academia, industry, and even now I have some like academic institutions I'm currently working with as well. And I presented at Wonder Woman in STEM, which is a conference that Prasha hosts under the Her STEM Story umbrella, as well as for SAi, just recently did a course called Your Website in 4D, which covers some similar topics here as well. So I'm really excited to be here today to talk to y'all about the whole process. All right, so before we start, I just want to see where everyone's at. So you feel free to like unmute or just put in the chat. But first, let's talk. What do you think a website need? What do you think like encompasses a website?
Mission statement.
Brittany, I'll also look at the chat as well. So,
Oh.
Did she?
Hello, I'm back.
Oh, you're back. All right.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
So we have two comments. Morgan said contact info, Jackie mission statement. Who are you?
Yes. Yes, those are all great. Any other thoughts? No? Okay, yes. So mission statement is very important, as is a contact form or something, because you definitely want people to come to your website and connect with you, so you can share ideas and things like that. That's kind of the reason for your website. But first, before we get into, I guess, those are be something you would call features of the website. We want to get down to the core of it, which is your website needs to have one strategy and then content. And those two things will create your website design. So a common mistake I see is that a lot of people, when they start out building their website, they kind of just go straight into building. And that actually leads them to feel really stuck for a long time because they don't yet have a clear idea of what their website strategy is, or they don't know what content to put on it. And as you can see in this formula, you definitely need to have both strategy and content before you can get any website, any type of design for your website. So which is why I created this 4-step framework to make it easy for you to remember how to build your website. And so first, it's called the 4D method, and it's a step-by-step process to help you create a simple and organized website in a stress-free way. So the reason why it's called 4D is because it starts with 4 Ds. Number 1 being defining your strategy. Number 2, developing your content. Number 3, designing your website. And number 4, delivering your website. So we're gonna go into each of these steps. We're gonna break them down, and there will be an opportunity for you to, we'll do like a little bit of hot seat, whoever is ready for it. If you wanna volunteer, we'll do that as well during the presentation. So first, step 1 is defining your strategy. So what do I mean by strategy? So for every website, you need to have some type of website strategy, which is just a plan. And it's important for you to get this plan together so that you create a website that is purposeful. If you create a website without a strategy, it won't help you with your goals, with whatever your end goal is for your website, because the purpose of your website is to communicate, for example, your project to your audience. And there is some type of action you want them to do, whether it's to read your blog or to like follow your podcast or your YouTube. If that is like your end goal, that's like the purpose of your website is to communicate that. So there are 3 things you need to keep in mind when you are defining your website strategy. And I came up with this acronym, very proud of it. It's called the PUG strategy because it stands for P, which is purpose, which is why do you want a website? and what is, your reason for having it, whether it's for your project or your personal goals. 2 are your users. So who is visiting your website? And I think last week with Prasha's presentation, she talked about ICA. So your like ideal client or your user, that's a person you want to keep in mind when you create your website. Next are your goals. So goals kind of split into 2 here. One is your own goals for your website. So whether that is to get people to subscribe to your channel, to donate to your project or funding or whatever, and you also have your user goals, which are maybe they're there to find more information, to be educated. They want to buy something. They want to support a certain cause. So you want to kind of keep that in mind. So once you are able to define your strategy, it will be a lot easier to create your website content because you know who you're talking to and what to talk about. By understanding your users that you're targeting, you can create a user journey. You can address all those. I think last week I saw that spreadsheet where Pasha talked about like their desires and their goals and objections and things like that. All those things would go into this section about website strategy when you create your strategy. So you want to create a user journey, which means that just envisioning the steps that takes the users from like the beginning, from when they land on your website to the point at the end, which is whatever your end goal is or their end goal is. So yeah, and then we will do example on the next slide. So I don't know if any of you have already like kind of gotten a clear idea about like if you are wanting to create a website, if you have a clear idea of like your purpose and your users and goals. Maybe let's just take like a minute or 2 to kind of jot a couple of notes down and then we can kind of workshop it. Yeah. So if you want, you can just like put in the chat like you want to talk, or you can just like unmute and share. Probably just take like 1 or 2 people and we can kind of refine your strategy a little bit.
Don't be shy, people.
I'll go.
Okay.
My project is, I think right now, at least in this current iteration, we're looking at primarily video content, but I see the website as probably an important piece in recruiting partnerships with other institutions. I mean, I think of a website and, in its like most reduced form, it's kind of like the digital business card.
Yeah.
And so like I could be hosting videos like directly on the website, but honestly, like the reach is so much larger on YouTube. Like they're going to be in both places realistically. But I'm thinking of like the website is also a delivery platform for additional content. And so there's like, I've already got an email harvester that's like set up on it, but that when I think about if people watch videos that I produce, I want to send them to like, what's like the next level of content that they would be looking for. And it could be like recommended books that they should look at, or other organizations that are doing similar work. And that could be delivered in like either just like a text, like a web page format or a blog format, or like downloadable PDFs. And that would allow for like email contact. So like people are maybe used to getting emails from me. And yeah, I think that's how I'm thinking of the website, as like kind of supporting a video channel.
Yeah. What you said was really good when you said like the website is like the digital business card. And I think even if you are like just starting out with your project, you don't yet have like a lot of stuff yet, at least like claim the name and things like that and put on there like that this is coming, this is something that you're working on. And I think one thing that you said that was really interesting was that the website would be for the partnerships, right, to get collaborators and things. So that would be something you would consider in your users. So it sounds like right now you have two types of users. One would be the people you want to collaborate with, your partnerships, and two, the people who are interested in whatever your project is. And for example, people who sign up on your email list. Is that what you meant by email harvester?
Yeah, I'm collecting emails out of force of habit because that's what you do. And so I don't have like a distinct plan for how I would end up using that list like super long term. But it's just always good to have, right?
Yeah.
And exactly, you hit the nail on the head that I have two users, and that there's the audience I want to serve, but I know that that audience is aggregated around a few types of like kind of workforce development supportive nonprofits. And so by partnering with those organizations, my plan is that I'm going to be able to get a better handle on my real user base, just kind of like they're a captive audience that I can target and like tailor content for, and do like, I think, more concentrated iterations of testing for the videos. So that's the hope. And obviously, like, I've just gone through a stretch of like cold calling and cold emailing of like, will someone please talk to me and work with me? And so I'm making progress on that. I'm having a meeting this week actually with, I'm reconnecting with a former partner, which is really exciting. But so far, like in building the super minimal website that I have, it struck me like, wow, I have all of the branding decisions, all of the content that I would normally have some intuition about how to fill. Man, I would be guessing in like in a pretty big, in a way that felt very new to me. And so that was insightful to just realize like, well, this is done. So it's certainly not in its final iteration, but I mean, it's like, oh no, the partners are super necessary because I have like vague notions about how to do this design.
Yeah, so
Sorry, that was a bit of a rant, but yeah,
okay.
active thought process.
Yeah, but once you have, now that you know that your partnerships are a core of your website, you can start thinking about like what their end goal is, or what your end goal is to secure the partnership, right? Or like, are they coming to you, or are you going to them?
Oh, I'm shopping. I'm definitely like pitching myself to anyone who will listen.
All right, yeah. So if that's the case, then your website really needs to clearly communicate why you're like the best person for, your idea, and what your like credibility is and things like that. So those are, for example, that would be under your goal, and under their goal would be like they want to they want to make sure that you're credible, right? So that's kind of like where you want to make sure that your content lines up there. So it sounds like now that you've like identified that will really help you with the next part, which is developing your content. So when I talk about like website content, sometimes people think like when we say content, sometimes now with like Instagram or Twitter, we think like Instagram content, like posting or blog posts. But in this case, that's not what I'm talking about. For now, when I say website content, I just mean like all the text, the images, the links or videos that you will have on your website. And to develop your content, came up with a framework. It's called BCDE. And so each step stands for another step. So first is you want to brainstorm all the content you want to have on your website. Everything that you want to include on your website, put it down on a sheet of paper, on a Google Doc, draw it on a board, something, just get it out there. Don't worry about like whether or not it fits or yet, just get everything out. Then the second part is categorize. So how can you organize your content in a way that makes sense to your user? You want to, a common way to do this, and we'll get a little bit more into it, is, like website pages. For example, in your menu, a lot of people have like an about page, contact page, service page or more about projects, something like that. So that's like the internal structure of our website. We'll get to that in a bit. Then after that is you want to develop it. So by developing, I mean really flesh out the actual words that you want on in each section, as well as, you know, any relevant images or links, videos for that page. And then lastly, you want to edit. Pretty self-explanatory. Make sure there are no typos. Things sound clear. They sound like you. They don't, not just like you, but more like they sound like you are for your audience. So for example, if your audience is expecting, you know, something more like professional or like not so casual, right? Make sure the writing kind of reflects that. But if they're expecting something more like fun and personal, then make sure also that the writing reflects that as well. So when you follow this framework, you won't like get stuck in like, oh, I don't know what to put on my website, because the brainstorm really gets all your thoughts going, and you can continually iterate through this framework as you keep developing and fleshing out your ideas. So some examples of website content that might be relevant for you is one is your personal story. For example, how did you come up with this concept? Why did you come up with this concept? Why is it important to you? It could be your research, maybe your background about how your research influenced this project. Next is you really want to share really what is the problem, why is it important, what's your solution, and all this is something that you will address through the logic model as well as in your pitch deck. So really, when you think about it, it's kind of all very similar. They all like follow the same structure. You're just kind of presenting it in a different way. You could include things like lessons learned, question, myths, or news in your field or in the topic that you want to address, as well as other common topics like introductory, like what is XYZ, for example. What is like the background information that your user needs to understand in order to engage with your project. So under developing your content, we're going to talk about the different pages that you can include. So first is the home page. This is the first page that people will land on when they get to your website. So the goal of the home page is not just to have like a pretty page. It's really to help your user know that they're in the right place. So for example, somebody mentioned earlier mission statement. The mission statement is something that you would put on the home page. So the home page would be like, for example, you can share your project's purpose, and you can, a lot of times it's kind of framed as like an I help statement, like, or a value proposition. So maybe, I think in the logic model, there's I forgot what number it is, but it's like a one line, like describe your project in one line, right, Daniel? Yeah.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Number 7.
So for example, number 7. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so that would be something you would like display on your home page. So then that way your user, when they land on there, they're like, okay, yeah, I'm in the right place because I am this like user or audience, and I'm interested in this problem, or I'm interested in the solution. Next is your about page. So on your about page, it's not only to educate your user about why your user should engage with your not just about you, but why your user should engage with your content. So you should talk about, again, your story, if it's relevant, any experience that you've had, and like what makes you credible, whether it's like your personal experience, any like what is it, certifications, or like your research, something to back up what you're saying. Next is if you want to include about your research, can talk about impact, why it's relevant. Another one is if you are doing like a series of projects, you have like a portfolio. This is more relevant for, you know, your personal academic website. You want to share your best work. not necessarily all your work, but your best work, something that is like aligned with your whatever your end goal is, right? So for example, as a website designer, I would not talk about my experience working at a bookstore for like 3 months. I would just talk about my relevant website experience on my website. And then lastly, a blog. If you choose to blog, you don't have to blog. You can talk about like what topics that are relevant to you, like what do you want to be known for, and what do you want to say about these topics. So a couple tips for writing your website content and developing it. One is to always keep in mind your users, your goals, and your users' goals. So if it doesn't fit any of those three, you might not want to include it on your website. Next is you want to think of call to actions to guide your users to your goals. So call to actions are commonly seen as like buttons on websites. They're kind of like a contact me, or like if you're on a shopping site, like add to cart, something like that. So it's always like a verb and then something. So these, think of them as like road signs that like push your user to your end goal. So like say like your end goal is to get them to sign up to watch your video, like on your homepage, for example. You could include like a section about like, you know, this is our newest video, like watch this video on YouTube. It's very pretty simple. Next is we kind of talked about this, write clearly and concisely in your voice, or like a voice that you want your brand to have. And another tip for this is you can use Google Docs voice typing. So if sometimes if it's hard for you to like write or type words out, you get a little stuck, use the voice typing or use voice notes to get the words out first, and then maybe transcribe that, and then you will get something. It'll help you develop your website content faster. Just depends on if you are, I guess, like a more verbal type person or more like word. I don't know how to what the word is, but you get what I mean. Right. So the next step is designing your website. So we'll get into the technical setup in a bit, but a lot of the website builders now are drag and drop, so you don't really need to code to design. But the main thing that you do need to keep in mind is about, you know, your visual brand. So that would be like the fonts or the colors, as well as like the layout you want to have. So before you design your website, you may want to look at other.
I'm sorry to interrupt. There's a transcription component in Google Docs. Can you tell me this tool?
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't know if you guys, can you guys, let me see. Do you see this Google Doc right here? Okay. Yeah, so you would just go to tools and then you go to voice typing. And I don't know if this will work right now. There you go. So you can just do that and it will just type as you, yeah.
I'm gonna admit, I did not know about this. This is, oh my God.
It's a little creepy, but yeah, it's a little creepy, but it works. So
Fantastic.
This is excellent. Thank you.
yeah, I'm so glad you guys like that. I love looking up these random things. Anyways, so back to designing your website. So before you start designing your website, you may have already seen, done a little bit of like competitor or like similar type of research where you look at other people who have similar projects as you, and you kind of see what they're currently doing. You can also take a look at their website, think about, you know, what are they doing well? What can they improve on? What do you want to add? That can be all part of your inspiration. I would say maybe get like 2 to 3, not too many, and just kind of point elements out that you like, that you want to incorporate on your own. And then after that, you can start sketching out layouts. So I recommend either drawing it out. I wouldn't recommend going straight into website builder yet. You want to kind of visualize it on your own, kind of base it on your website content. So like say you want to have like an image somewhere, you would, you know, draw a box, you know, and then, yeah, so you can just sketch it out. However, then after that, you won't take that image and then put it into your website builder. So again, like I mentioned, the website builders are, a lot of them are drag and drop, very like PowerPoint like. You just put the function or whatever, you would put it there. And then after that, then you would start modifying colors and fonts. I do not recommend doing that first, because sometimes you will change your mind and that will slow you down. So I would say put in all your content first, then see how it looks, and then start changing the colors and fonts. And for some resources, I'll send you the slide deck so you can kind of see some of these. But these are some free resources for images. So you have like Unsplash, Pixabay, Pinterest. You can get like image inspiration there. For colors, you can go to coolers.co. You can create color palettes there. They also have a color blindness tool. So it's actually really cool. You can make sure that your color palettes are accessible to those who are colorblind. So it's just, you would just click here and then you can kind of see like what the palette would look like to someone with color blindness. So some of them like for example, if you put in like red and green, I'm sure it would probably turn out very similar. But anyways, you can have fun with that. I really like this. It's really interesting and fun. Okay. Next is fonts. Google Fonts is a great resource for free fonts. So if you also wanted to install new fonts on your computer, you can get them for free off of Google Fonts. And there's a lot of, all these fonts are usually available on all the website builders. And lastly, if you want to create customized graphics like logos and things like that, you can use Canva. Have y'all heard of Canva before? Yes. Okay, cool. Yeah, so Canva is really awesome. You can create a free account. You might be a little bit limited, but you can, they already have like all these different dimensions for you already. So like Instagram post, Twitter, YouTube thumbnail. You can find all that here so you don't have to like recreate them yourself. Next is delivering your website. So what do I mean by deliver? Really delivering just means sharing it with your audience. And sometimes when it comes to delivering your website, might have some a bit of like a mindset block. I know I've seen this in my clients as well as myself. Like when you first like have your idea, you know, you're really excited to work on it, but when it comes time to actually share it, you're just kind of like, oh, I don't know if I actually want to share it. I'm afraid like someone will judge me or blah, blah, blah. And really, usually when you think that like, you know, someone else will judge you, it's kind of like you're like judging yourself ahead of time. So sometimes it just, you just kind of got to like press publish and just go with it, especially if you, for a project like for SAi, because just because you create this project and you publish it, it's not enough to just publish it, right? You really have to share it for it to gain traction. And so one thing that I would recommend doing before you know, if you're experiencing some of these like imposter syndrome type of thoughts, just do an exercise. It's called worst case, best case scenario. For example, you know, like what's the worst that can happen if you like publish your website? Usually it could be just something like somebody says something, they don't like it. And like, what would you do in that situation, you know? And then the other part would be, what's the best case scenario? Well, the best case scenario is that, you know, you get more viewers on your channel, or you get people to read your blog or something like that. And, you know, more likely than not, the best case will be where most people end up. So when it comes to delivering your website, there are 3 steps that you want to make sure you do. First is review your website, make sure that everything works. For example, links on your websites, make sure you that there are fewer typos. Look on mobile, because a lot of people nowadays are navigating websites through mobile, about 50%. So it's not just on your computer anymore. So that's important. And next is you want to click publish. And after you click publish, you also want to share on your social media. So whether that's Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever, you know, method you're using for really pushing out your project. Those are all great. And next is manage. So what's like the plan for keeping up your website? So for example, if you're blogging, you may want to blog once a week, once a month, and you don't need to always be like constantly on your website. Just find like a schedule that works for you. So for example, you know, if you update something really major, maybe that's the only time you update your website, you know. So yeah, so in this case, you know, it's really important that you kind of clear your mind of all like your I guess anxieties or whatever thoughts that you may have, because even if you have like a finished website, a finished project, like if you don't yet feel like super confident or like feel maybe not just confident, but just like, I guess, ready to like take that leap, right? Then you won't be able to reach the goal that you set for yourself because it's not really getting out there. And another thing is that when you publish your website, you actually can always edit it. So no worries if there's something wrong. That's just something some people ask me like, oh, if I published it, like, can I change it? Yeah, you can always change it. And so, you know, once you've published and launched your website, it will help you get your message out there, achieve whatever goals that you've already set for yourself, expand your network, build your credibility, because you're leveraging your website and delivering your audience, and you're making it known that this is like something you're doing. So just gonna do like a quick example. So this is one of my previous clients. Her name is Alyssa, and she is a bird photographer and ecologist. And this is her website before we worked on it together. And so she had a free WordPress.com website, and this was the homepage. And so on here, you can see, you know, she has this like tagline, uncompromising environmental ethics. And up here, she kind of already sorted her different categories here. But when you first come to your website, like the first thing you see is just like this like block of text, which is like informative if you read it, but it doesn't exactly tell me like who Alyssa is or like what she does. And that is something that's really important when someone first lands on your website, is that they need to know like within like 5 seconds, like what it is you're about. So for example, I guess if you were to like zoom in, she talks more about, you know, why she is into environmental advocacy and being a birder and things like that. And so after we worked together, this is kind of what her website looks like more or less now. So we have this, you know, we have her name and we have this tagline here. She says that she's an environmental educator, aspiring ecologist, and bird photographer. And then we kind of ease into sharing more about her. For example, in this section, this first featured section should either be like, in your case, it would be like about you or about your project. Like, you know, this project is to, you know, help I don't know, whoever it is you're helping, and or share information about whatever. So you would kind of like, you could highlight that here. You can link to like your about page here. This is usually what I would do. I would link to the about page, more about our project, more about us, our vision, our mission, whatever it is. And then the next section imagine this would be under here. I just split in half so it's a little easier to see. This section would be like a featured post or like a highlight. So for example, if you were, you know, recently featured in a publication, or maybe it's like your latest video, your latest podcast episode, something that you want someone to engage in, you could put that here. So for example, hers says blog. Yours could say watch the video on YouTube, or listen to the podcast episode. that's what you could put here. The other important thing is to include titles and descriptions for things, because you want to, kind of tell the audience up front what's on the other side. They don't ever want to just click on something without knowing what's on the other side. So you also want to be clear about what they can expect. And then this last section, this is actually like a slideshow, but this was just to feature her photography. So one of her goals was to showcase her bird photography, so that we incorporated that here. And then last is this subscribe to the blog. So this was another one of her goals. She wanted people to subscribe. And this would probably be a good place. The end of the homepage would be a good place for you to put like your contact form or your email newsletter form or something like that. And you want to make sure that you tell them that, in exchange for their email address, this is what they're going to get, or that, if they're going to contact you, you want to be clear about the reasons why they're contacting you. So for example, if you want someone to contact you about, chemistry and advocacy, then they can contact you. Otherwise, if you just say, I just want to chat, well, it's not very clear. So, and you might get people who are not, as they call it, qualified leads. So people who might end up wasting your time. So you want to avoid that as well. So yeah, that's why it's always important to keep in mind who your users are, what their problems are, and so that you can address that on the page through your website text. So the next part is a technical setup, and I'm just kind of gonna skim through this because I'll actually send you, or you can sign up. You can get this workbook, which will help you go through the 4D steps, as well as explain this a little bit more in depth. So when it comes to your website, there are the 3 main steps I usually tell people to do. Is number 1 is to buy a domain. So a domain is just your website URL. So it can be for like, for SAi, it's stemadvocacy.org. It's .org, right? And
it's both.
Oh, it's both. Oh, you have .com and .org?
Yeah, the .com forwards to the .org.
Ah, yeah, see, okay, that's next level right there. So that's very smart. So yeah, so first you want to get a domain name. And so for some of you, if you want to create personal academic websites, it would be your name. If you have a project, it would be whatever your project name is. And you can buy more than one domain as Manuel did for SAi. And you can, link them or redirect them. So that's a little bit more complicated. That's out of scope of this presentation, but yes, you can do that as well. So what I typically recommend is like if you have like a username on social media that is, really big to your personal brand, you'll want to get that name as well, which is, for example, if you type in my username, which is, you can see it in my Zoom, BRTTNYTRNH.com. If you type that in, it will redirect you to my website. So your website domain, you can typically buy it from Google Domains or Namecheap. I prefer Google Domains just because it connects to my Google account and I don't have to log into something else. And domains usually cost around $10 to $20 a year, depending on where you buy it or what the name is. And all of that will be in this website workbook, which you'll see in a bit. The next is to choose a website platform. So there's a lot of website platforms out there. In the next slide, I will share with you the ones that I recommend. So we'll talk about that in a bit. And then lastly, after that, you want to create an account and purchase a subscription or a hosting plan if you need to. And so if you want like the full breakdown of all this stuff, you can go to my brittanytrinh.com/kit and you'll get the workbook, which I'll show in a bit as well. So next is we're going to talk about like what's the best website builder. So I always get this question on Twitter. I always see it, and really it all depends on whatever your website goals are. Of course, there are some that people recommend, but ultimately you need to be you need to know what you want on your website, what you want your website to do, and then you find a platform that does those things. Because if you do it the other way, where you just take someone's recommendation and you sign up, you may find out that this website platform doesn't have the function that you want, and then you'll feel like, oh, well, that sucks because now you just spent your money and whatever. So in the next slide, this slide, I have a comparison chart of the 4 platforms that I recommend for people, and The 4 platforms are Owlstown, WordPress.com, self-hosted WordPress.org, and Squarespace. And so Owlstown is a platform. This is primarily for people who want to create like a CV style type of website. So if you need a personal academic website really quick, check out Owlstown. I know the developer is really awesome, but it's a very simple website. I don't have much on mine, but let me, just so that you can see what it kind of looks like. It's very simple, but it's like you have like a little about page. You can have like projects. You can insert your publications and things like that. So if you're trying to, create a quick website for your personal academic stuff, you might want to do that. But for your SAI projects, you may be interested in something like WordPress.com or Squarespace or even self-hosted WordPress. And so you can kind of see that, these two have more of these functionalities, if these are things you're looking for. But of course, there's also a bit of a trade-off in terms of like ease of use and price and things like that. So it all depends on whatever your website goals are. And again, this is in the website kit. So you go to brittanytrinh.com/kit. And I see a question. Question is, what are situations where you need to distinguish between landing pages and full-on websites? Yeah, so that's a really great question. With the landing page, like if, for example, if you are just starting out your project and you don't yet have like a fully fleshed out concept, but you want to do like a wait list or something, then that's when you would use just like a landing page. You'd be like, hey, this is coming soon. This is what we're about. Want to know more? Here's like sign up to be notified. But once you already have something that's really fleshed out, you have a lot of content, then that's when you would create a full-on website. And especially if you're trying to get like grants or something like that, if there's like certain things they're looking for on a website, maybe that's when you would need a full-on website. But if you just are trying to like establish hype, or you're just, you want to claim the spot and like kind of put like a placeholder, that's like when you would put a landing page. Okay. So one last platform that I didn't mention that actually is really great and totally accessible to everybody, and I want to share it with the world, and it is Google Sites. So how many of you have heard or used Google Sites before? Yes? Okay, I only see 2 hands. Well, I don't see everybody's. Anyways, yeah. So yeah, Google Sites is awesome. And the reason why it is awesome is because, one, it's accessible through Google Drive. So you don't need to like log into anything and do anything fancy. 2, it connects easily with your Google domain. So and then you can just build your website, connect the domain, and then publish it. And all that for about $12 a year. So this would be like the most low cost option out there. So, if you just want something super simple to get your project up, you can use something like Google Sites to do that. And I don't know if this is still up. Okay, yeah. So for example, this is my example for my Google site. So I just made this a while back. But as you can see here, I was trying to use it for like my academic profile. And you can do this as well just by going into Google Drive. We'll just go in here. And you can just, it'll be right here. So as you can see here, this is a really great way to kind of get started with website building if you are not yet like familiar with how like websites work. So I would typically recommend this to someone who like doesn't want to like put a lot of money out yet, and just kind of get a feel for it, because after you play around with it for a bit, you'll kind of see like what you actually need for your website, and then from there you can kind of like upgrade to WordPress or Squarespace or whatever. And so on the sidebar here, you can see there's a lot of you have some preset layouts, and then you also have pretty much all the Google apps on here, so you can kind of integrate them in here as well. But for Google Sites, I won't go too in depth about like how to build one, but I will also send you a guide. It's called the Google Sites Guide. So it's a visual, like, what is it, like guide, like manual. So it will walk you step by step, so that you can kind of create a website like this for yourself, your project, if that is something you're interested in. All right, so that's pretty much all I have for today. So, we just talked about, the 4D method, as well as the technical setup and, Google Sites, a brief overview of Google Sites. And so again, if you are looking for the entire website, it's called the Website Starter Kit. This is a preview of it. So this walks you through the 4D step that we just talked about, defining your strategy, developing your content. You can use this workbook to kind of get your ideas out. And then lastly, we talked about that technical guide. So all the stuff I talked about is in here. So if you are interested in getting this, you can just go to the website. And you can also connect with me on Instagram or Twitter. I'm active on both, but more website content is on Instagram. I talk more about that stuff there. And you can also DM me as well if you have any questions about what we talked about today. And that is all I have for my presentation. So if you have any questions, feel free to share in the chat, or yeah, or you can unmute.
I was talking to a graphic designer friend of mine about an easy way to build a website, and she recommended Squarespace or Wix. What do you think of Wix?
Oh, you muted yourself again?
No, that was it. I just didn't know. You didn't mention Wix. So I didn't know if you had an opinion about it, if it's useful or.
I personally don't like Wix. So if it's between Squarespace or Wix, I would say Squarespace. You also like pay about the same for them, so I think Squarespace would be.
We have used, my first, by the way, STEM Advocacy first launched on Wix. Very heavy HTML5. Really can't see the back end much, and you can move stuff around, but it's so heavy, slow, and very expensive. Don't like it. Squarespace is better. If you have to pick between the two.
Yeah, and Squarespace also has student pricing. So if you have like a .edu, you can get 50% off your first year. I don't know about Wix, but the other thing about Wix is that pretty much like if you put anything on the website, it's kind of hard to import, meaning like to download the content and put it somewhere else. You would literally have to copy and paste everything. Whereas on Squarespace or WordPress, you can do some type of importing, and if that's what you need. But yeah. I personally don't recommend Wix for people who try to like want to DIY. There are website designers who do great website design with Wix. I'm not saying it's impossible. If I'm thinking about like, time constraint, if you want to create something that looks nice in a short amount of time and not mess with things, like I would say between the two, go with Squarespace.
When it comes to upgrading between platforms, I can imagine, I'm really glad that you mentioned Google Sites, because I love using those for like test projects and stuff. Squarespace, I have heard, makes it kind of tough to get your domain back from them. If you like start with Squarespace and then want to move your domain to a WordPress.org kind of setup, you just have to, it's like just very laborious. Can you confirm or deny?
I'm not sure about that. Usually in the websites that I've worked with Squarespace, my client, they bought it from like I think they bought it from like GoDaddy or something. And so then we just connected it. But that's kind of why I recommend buying it from Google Domains, because then you kind of have control over it, as opposed to like buying straight. I mean, Squarespace is a great all-in-one solution. So if your goal is, I just want everything all in one, never worry about it again, then maybe go with Squarespace. But if you care about control, that's like something to consider. There's a lot of like, you have to make a lot of decisions when it comes to making a website. So really you just have to think about like, what is like, what is your lifestyle or like goal with your website, right? Like if you want more options, then you have to choose the one that has more options. If you just want something more simple, usually they have options like that, but it might be a little bit more expensive or this and that. So you just have to take into account what it is that you want to do when it comes to your website.
Yeah, Brittany, there's a comment from Ife in the chat.
Finished products, don't use landing pages, control conversion, specific contract value. I would say I'm not sure if this is like within my like scope of knowledge. I mean, like for example, in the online coaching industry, there's a lot of people do just have like landing pages for their specific product. That's true. But I mean, do you have a finished product right now? You know those things? If you know those things, that's fine. And you can like track all that stuff through like Google Analytics. But right now I'm just kind of thinking of like, if you're just starting up or something, that's what like the landing page would be for.
I think my understanding of landing pages is that if somebody has disparate bodies of work, or if they're like a musician and also a scientist, they don't want to have that necessarily on the same web page. So if they have the means to create two fully separate web pages for their endeavors, then they'd be like, this is the same person, I promise, but here's all the other stuff that I do, is what I understand it as.
Yeah. Yeah, usually like a landing page, it just has like one like function, like one main goal. So usually with a landing page, you wouldn't see something like a menu, for example. So let me see if I even have an example of this. I don't think I do. So I guess like in a previous iteration of this website, this page just looked like this. And this would be like the landing page because this is the conversion. But this is now on the, well, that's just like Netflix is like the homepage. I mean, I guess because they have a very clear call to action. So if you want to take a look at Netflix, well, I think it'll just take me to my account. But that, yeah.
Yeah, so I think you're right with that, Brittany, that I think it goes back to what are you trying to do? Okay, I think if you fundamentally always go back there, you'll then decide what is then the action call, right? Or the decision making on this page that I'm going to create. Netflix has this goal, right? I think it is to either sign up or log in or something, right? So it's a very clear call to action. If you have that, you have options now to play with, right? If you do not, then you have to go to a different path slightly, right? So it just depends on where you are. But good points.
Yeah, and just like I guess like a more, if we want to get like very technical, there's a difference between a home page and a landing page. Landing page usually just has like one, like that main converting factor. There's no menu on the page. There's nothing. I can't think of one off the top of my head right now, but for example, I don't know if you've ever seen like those pages where they like sign up to get this free guide or whatever, and it's like, or like buy their product, like one of those, they're called tripwire products if you're familiar. But yeah, and then like at the very bottom of the page, it's like buy. Well, that's because that itself is a landing page. Like you can't click on home, you can't click on anything. None of those links exist. So which is why I showed my example. Like if it didn't have the menu at the top, it would be considered a landing page because the only one thing you can do is to sign up for the thing. So, and a home page is different, but people use them interchangeably. And from our case, we will also use it interchangeably, but yeah.
I like that separation, actually. It's good. Any other comments? I've seen a couple of websites out there. You guys have been busy launching, so that's good to hear. But lots of options, as Brittany said, there's many decisions you have to make, and it can be tough. Brittany, what are some of the things that you've seen in the industry, right? Just in terms of lessons learned, like or things actually better. Let me rephrase it. Things that people make mistakes on, very common things, in terms of when they're starting off, that if you were to impart your wisdom, what would you say?
I would say
advice?
for sure is like whenever they start their website and they haven't like really thought through about what they want to put on there, like they just go in and they're like, I'm just gonna like play around with it. Well, playing around with it will end up being like hours wasted, because I've done that, my clients have done that, and then usually end up frustrated because you spent all this time on there, but you don't yet have a clear idea of what it is you want to put there. And then the other thing is would be just getting like too caught up in like the look of it and not thinking about like the actual use. Yeah. So spending too much time on choosing a color, choosing a font, well, just choose something, right? You can always change it. The important thing is like it says what your user is looking for, and that it, you know, helps you reach your goals. Because if it doesn't do those two things, then your website is just it's just a pretty website. And a website needs to be more than pretty in this day and age, right? Especially if you have a project and you want to get people on board, you want to convince them to, you know, support your project in any way. You can't just be like, you know, here's my project. You have to really explain why. You have to really touch on their pain points or their desires, and showcase that through the website. You kind of take them through that journey. So if you don't do that, then your website it will be ineffective. So that's why it's so important to really hone in on your users, your audience. That's why you do the market research. That's why you validate your idea. You want to make sure that this is something people are looking for or they're interested in, because if they're not, you know, then, you know, you have to think about how can you position yourself in a way so that, you know, they will be interested in it. So all the things in the logic model, they all come into play when you make your website. You always have to keep those things in mind. So
And all roads lead to the logic model. Uh, even your personal logic model. Okay, don't forget that, by the way. It is right there with it. Same thing. What questions are you asking in your life? And how does this project you're working on fit into your personal logic model? It does somehow. You have to connect the dots. And how are you communicating it to the outside world? Okay. Brittany, this was fantastic. Any last minute questions? I have a couple of reminders at the end here, but this was fantastic. I'm always learning something new. So
I have one last question. So when we want to use an art design or pictures from an open source such as Canva, like, do I need to credit it? Like, I just try to be like really careful with the copyright when it comes to building my own website.
yeah, that's a really good question. So on Canva, I think that like if you use like their free account, I think you're like able to use it if it's like for personal use, but you have to double check that. And then for the websites that that I linked, such as Unsplash, Pixelbay, and things like that, all of those are, I think they're freely usable. So you don't have to credit them, but you can if you want to. So you can just credit it like under the image if you want. But that's why I personally don't use a lot of those. I just use like personal images. So, you know, pictures of yourself or your product or whatever. Whatever is relevant. Yeah.
yeah,
You can just include it with the image.
when you're unsure, just do it, right?
Just don't take it off of like Google Images.
Right.
That's why I recommend like Unsplash or Pixelbay. And there's like some other resources as well.
Or
Yeah.
work with an artist. Shameless plug.
Yeah, work with
exactly.
yeah,
So
work with an artist. Oh, by the way, oh, sorry, I was just asking you, are you like branding designer type of graphic artist, or it's just like science art?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, I've done both. I trained as a scientific illustrator, but I've done logos and things and stuff. But that's besides the point.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Well, but yeah, or you can work with an artist, yeah, and then it's a win-win. Yeah.
Alrighty, so this is a lot of information. I think, Brittany, you'll be sharing some of the material in Slack directly. Brittany's already in Slack, and so you can message her there as well. You know, and again, with website, with any platform, because I think the question is, do you need to be launching a website? Is that the best place for your thing? You have to think about that, right? Where are the places I could be launching in a way? But you need to launch something because we want to get you guys moving, right? Just another step in your journey, in your traction. So definitely work on getting something out there by pitch day, because that's something people immediately, when they see it, they want to go there. Okay, to wherever that is. It could be just a Twitter page as well. If you don't get to it, that's fine. It's just getting, or as you saw today, Google Sites just makes it super easy to launch something quick, even without a full-on domain name that you want to hold on to yet. Okay. Okay, so with that said, thank you, Brittany. A couple of reminders. First one, so you guys, I'm sharing a link right now. We do have an SAi alumni page. If you're on LinkedIn already, please join us there, okay? As we get into that stage, I wanna make sure we can keep track and you guys can connect with former fellows, okay? And other members of SAi. There, we randomly drop things, not all of them are in Slack, so that's why you should definitely join us there and keep in touch. I'll keep reminding you as the weeks go by. Another reminder for this upcoming week, Friday, CollabX happy hour, please say yes or no. Okay, actually, yes or no, all right, in the invite so that I know you're coming. But please come if you can. It should be fun. Speed dating around and then connecting with people and connecting with each other, right? That was one of the feedback points from last iteration. People like more chances to connect, okay? I know you guys can do so already in Slack, but this time we're gonna do it formally in a fun gather town setting. And then lots of events. Dr. Anna Skop on Saturday. This is gonna be exciting. So please join us if you can. She is like a really, really awesome speaker. She works on connecting science and art in really unique ways. And she's made a full professor out of it and does teaching and research in the topic. So it's gonna be really exciting. And last but not least, Joanne Kamens on Tuesday. So next Tuesday, please make sure you come on time. Joanne is a wonderful speaker. She's a mentor of mine. She has helped me in pitches in so many things, and actually has even donated and supported through Agene, our organization. So I'm really thankful to her. So I'm really excited to have her. So as we usher into this next phase now, we're going to be talking about leadership next. So as you see, we're adding on these other dimensions, right? And then into funding, and then onto, again, towards the end, we're going to do a little bit of mock pitches as well. So it's amazing how fast things are moving along. And so I really appreciate you guys being with us on this journey. And with that, have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you interact. Hopefully see you Friday. Bye, everybody.